Hello everyone, welcome back. In today's video, we've got another news and rumor video here to discuss. In today's video, we're looking at some signings from our past couple of days, some injury updates, a couple of small pieces of news, and we've got some trade rumors involving the Leafs, the Panthers, and the Vancouver Canucks. We'll touch on all of this coming up right now. Hello everyone, welcome back to another video here at the End-to-End Hockey channel. Once again, if you haven't already, please leave a subscribe, please leave a like, please leave a comment. It really helps up with the channel, lets me know that you guys like this content. So if you guys want to do that, support the channel, leave a subscribe, leave a like, leave a comment. We'd love to hear your guys' opinion on all that was discussed here today. Also, don't forget to stay tuned for some live streams coming up in the next couple of weeks. We're going to be having some playoff live streams. I'll have the schedule once the playoffs are announced, so stay tuned for that. But we are going to be having a couple of live streams in the next couple of weeks, so stay tuned for that. And also don't forget to stay tuned for other things coming out in the very near future. Once again, we are back here with another news and rumor video. Just one quick channel update. The computer that I have for my video here is different. If you guys do remember, I made a community post about a couple of weeks ago saying that my old computer broke, so I was basically just putting it up for aesthetic purposes. But my dad was nice enough to lend me one of his older computers, so we do now have a working computer and we should be able to use it for some of our upcoming live streams. So great to see for that. But this is a computer that we're going to be having going forward, so very interesting note there. But we do have some very interesting stuff to talk about here today. We're going to start off as per usual by looking at a couple of signings from our past couple of days. Saw 3 signings from over the past 4 days, so the signings definitely started to slow down as of late. First, the Detroit Red Wings have signed 3rd round pick from the 2023 draft, Noah Dower-Nilsson, to a 3-year contract. He's a center / right winger. He's 20 years old. He gets a 3-year ELC, AAV of $900,000. That'll be at the start of next year. Now he's been playing over in the SHL, putting up 6 goals and 16 points in 48 games, which isn't terrible for a younger prospect playing in the SHL. I do think Dower-Nilsson has the potential to be a really solid middle 6 forward going forward for the Red Wings, and I think it'll probably take him a couple of years to get to the NHL level. But either way, a really solid pickup here for the Red Wings to sign Nilsson to a 3-year ELC. Another guy who got a 3-year ELC is Henry Brzustewicz, who's brother of Hunter Brzustewicz, who's currently in Calgary and was traded in the Elias Lindholm trade from Vancouver. Henry Brzustewicz is a 19-year-old right shot defenseman, was taken in just this past year's draft in the 1st round. He was a late 1st round pick, so a really solid pickup here for the Kings. He gets a 3-year ELC, AAV of $1.08 million. Once again, also starts the beginning of next year. It's not a bad pickup here for Los Angeles. He's been playing over in the OHL, where he put up 19 goals and 54 points in 59 games as a defenseman. So not bad stuff there for Brzustewicz. I do think he has a really solid future as like a really solid top 4 defenseman. For the LA Kings, still be a year or 2 away from making that jump to the NHL level. So really solid ELC signing here, but Brzustewicz is now under contract. And then we saw the Minnesota Wild sign Charlie Stramel. Stramel's the 1st round pick in the 2023 draft. He's 21 years old. He's a center / right winger as well. So really solid stuff there for the Wild. He gets a 3-year ELC, also $1.08 million. Starts the beginning of next year. Stramel has been playing over in the NCAA. This past year was brilliant, putting up 19 goals and 44 points in 37 games, which was brilliant for Stramel. And I think he has the potential to be a really solid top 6 forward going forward for the Minnesota Wild. Won't get into any game action this year as this contract starts at the beginning of next year, but I do think maybe even as early as next year he could challenge for a roster spot. So very interesting note there. But Stramel in Minnesota, Brzustewicz in LA, and Dower-Nilsson in Detroit have all signed ELCs. So very interesting note there. Next, going over to a couple of injury updates. So when it comes to some injury updates, we do have a couple of injury updates here to talk about. So first, in the Calgary Flames organization, Kevin Ball left yesterday's game for the Calgary Flames with a lower body injury and did not return. Not great news there. Didn't seem like it was anything too serious, but he may miss a game or 2 going forward. And with there only being a week and a half left in the season, most day-to-day injuries could potentially be season-ending injuries as well for teams who are not making the playoffs. So a bad blow there for the Flames as they lose one of their top defensemen. Jordan Martinook and Jordan Staal both missed Sunday's game with undisclosed injuries and are out day-to-day. I can't remember if they played yesterday or not, but they should be out for only a short period of time, so not great news there that they lose a couple of solid 3rd-line players to injuries. Well, Jalen Chatfield left yesterday's game as well, just like Ball, with a lower body injury and did not return, so hopefully it's nothing too serious as Chatfield's a pretty decent 3rd pair defenseman. Valeri Nichushkin, who missed 1 game with upper body injury, and Nick Robertson, who's been out the past 2 weeks with upper body injury, both returned to game action on Tuesday, so it's been the first time in a while the Avalanche have had basically a fully healthy forward group. So that was really good stuff there, but they didn't get great news last night either, as Kadri left Tuesday's game with upper body injury and did not return. So hopefully it's nothing too serious by Kadri, and maybe it's just something that's short term, but a bad blow there for the Avalanche to lose Kadri. Roope Hintz, who has missed over a month now with a lower body injury, is nearing a return, which is great news there for the Stars to get their top line center back in hopefully the very near future. Not sure if they'll wait until the playoffs, or maybe with a game or two left they'll put him in, but still really good news that Hintz could be nearing a return in the very near future. The choice Justin Falk, who missed 2 games with upper body injury, returned to game action on Tuesday, which was a big boost. Falk scored a couple of goals for the Detroit Red Wings yesterday, so it was huge that the Red Wings were able to get him back. However, Mason Appleton missed a 3rd straight game yesterday with a lower body injury, and Michael Rasmussen left yesterday's game with a lower body injury and did not return. So even though they got Falk back, bad blows to see Appleton's still out, and now Rasmussen might be out for the next little bit. Colton Dach, who missed 12 games for the Edmonton Oilers with undisclosed injury, was active off of long-term injury reserve and returned to game action yesterday on Tuesday. They actually scored a goal in yesterday's game, so really good stuff there for Colton Dach. Dmitry Kulikov, who missed 2 games with a broken nose, returned on Sunday, so good stuff there for the Panthers. Zach Bogosian has missed the Minnesota Wild's last 2 games with undisclosed injury and is out day-to-day, so not great news there for the Wild, as Bogosian is dealing with some injuries right now. Alex Texier missed his 7th straight game on Sunday with a lower body injury and is out day-to-day. However, he is starting to skate, and he could be nearing a return in the next couple of games, so that could be a big boost there for the Habs. So a really solid middle 6'4" back into the lineup, but he has now missed 7 straight. Nick Hague missed both Monday and Tuesday's games for Nashville Predators with undisclosed injury and is out day-to-day. Hopefully it's nothing too serious, as Hague is a pretty decent top 4 defenseman. Thomas Chabot, who was originally announced, I think it was a couple of weeks ago, he was going to be out 6 to 8 weeks, is apparently ahead of schedule, could return hopefully in the very near future. I'm not sure if they'll return before the playoffs start, but instead of potentially having to wait until at some point in round 2, if the Sens got there, they might be able to get him back in the late 1st round. So that could be a really big boost if they could get Chabot back at some point, which would be fantastic news for Ottawa. Stuart Skinner missed Sunday's game with upper body injury and is out day-to-day, so hopefully it's nothing too serious for him. Philip Grubauer left Monday's game with a lower body injury and didn't return for the Seattle Kraken. Kevin Lankinen missed Tuesday's game for the Vancouver Canucks with upper body injury and is out day-to-day, so hopefully it's nothing too serious for Grubauer or Lankinen, and they're able to get back in the very near future. And Niederreiter, who missed a month and a half since the Olympic break with a lower body injury, was active off of injury reserve and returned to game action on Tuesday. So that was a big boost there for the Jets to get a really solid middle 6 forward in Niederreiter back into the lineup. So very interesting note there, but some very interesting injury updates for our past couple of days. And like I said, for teams who are eliminated, day-to-day injuries might be season ending for a couple of players. So very interesting note there. Next, going over to a couple of recalls and reassignments. When it comes to some recalls, the Nashville Predators have recalled Jordan Osterley. The Penguins have recalled Avery Hayes and Sergei Marushev. The Bolts have recalled Geeky, Pelche, and Duke. The Leafs have recalled Hames. The Canucks have recalled Patera. And the Capitals have recalled Protas. So very interesting note there. The Preds are dealing with a couple of injuries to their blue line with a guy like Nick Hague, so they wanted some more defensive insurance, so they call up Jordan Osterley. The Penguins are dealing with a couple of injuries, like we talked about with Stuart Skinner as well, so they call up Marushev to be the backup for the time being, and Avery Hayes is just there to provide some added forward depth. Connor Geeky, Jacob Pelche, and Dylan Duke were all recalled by Tampa. They're dealing with a couple of injuries to guys like Holmberg and Hagel, which are just short-term injuries, so they just want some more added forward depth, so they recalled those 3 players. The Leafs recalled Luke Hames. He's a younger player. He might be able to get into a couple of NHL games to finish out the season, so not surprising there for Toronto. Jiri Patera was recalled by Vancouver because of the injury to Lankinen, and Ilya Protas was recalled by Washington just to provide some added forward depth, and Protas hasn't, I think, gone to the NHL level. His brother has, but he hasn't, so we'll see if he was able to make his NHL debut in the next couple of games for the Washington Capitals. So very interesting note there, but some very interesting recalls from our past couple of days. When it comes to some reassignments, the Anaheim Ducks reassigned Nathan Gaucher, the Calgary Flames reassigned Brennan Othman, the Florida Panthers reassigned Horvikov, the Penguins reassigned Gaucher, and the Jets reassigned Parker Ford. So very interesting note there. The Ducks are getting a little bit healthier, and they didn't need an extra healthy body at the NHL level, so they sent Gaucher down. The Flames resent Othman down. Once again, he didn't seem like he was getting very much playing time with the Calgary Flames. Hovorka was called up because of the injuries to the Panthers blue line, but with Kulikov back, they don't need him anymore at the NHL level, so he goes to the minors. Gaucher was sent down to the minors because they called up Sergei Marushev to back up Artur Silovs. so not too surprising there. And the Jets reassigned Parker Ford because of the recent activation of Nino Niederreiter. So very interesting there, but some more interesting reassignments from our past couple of days. And lastly, just going over to a couple of pieces of news. So when it comes to some pieces of news, just a couple of quick things here. First, the Pittsburgh Penguins apparently want to sign Ryan Shea to an extension, and Shea is open to the possibility of staying in Pittsburgh. He did a recent interview with, I think, The Athletic's Josh Yeo, and in that interview, he said that he would love to stay in Pittsburgh, and he doesn't really want to try and chase a big contract in free agency. So it sounds like the Pittsburgh Penguins are probably going to try and sign Ryan Shea in the offseason. It sounds like they're more focused on the playoffs at this point in time, but Shea, who's actually been a really solid fit for the Pittsburgh Penguins this year, might be open to an extension to stay in Pittsburgh instead of testing free agency. So very interesting note there. Another interesting thing is that Cato Rourke, with I think a 14 or 15-year-old prospect playing over in one of the lower end leagues, has applied for exceptional status to play in the OHL. So that's very interesting note there. Rourke, I think, 2 or 3 years out of his draft year, so I think he'd be in the 2028, 2029, maybe 2030 draft. I'm not exactly sure, but he's applied for exceptional status. You usually see a couple of really solid prospects apply for exceptional status. I think Misa did before he was drafted. On top of that, I think Landon Dupont, who's next year's first round pick, applied for exceptional status, so this kid looks good. Elliot Friedman did say that a lot of people do think around the NHL that he could play at the OHL level, so very interesting note there, but that could be one of the top future first round picks in Cato Rourke, who's applied for exceptional status into the OHL. According to some other recent reports, the Florida Panthers assistant Sonny Mehta is on the Leafs list of preferred GM candidates, so that's a very interesting note there. We know the Panthers have been building a pretty dang good team, so it wouldn't be too surprising that the Leafs would have some interest in one of the Panthers front office people, so that makes a ton of sense. Now, would he want to leave Florida? Would the Panthers let him leave? I'm not exactly sure, but that could be an interesting hire. I don't think Mehta has ever been really NHL GM before, so that could be a sort of first-time GM type of thing, so really interesting note there, but Mehta is apparently under consideration for the Leafs and one of the preferred GM candidates, currently being the Panthers assistant GM, so very interesting note there. And then we talked about this in one of our shorts recently. I just want to really quickly mention this, and that's that the Islanders have fired Patrick Waugh and hired Peter DeBoer as their new head coach, so very interesting note there. Like I said in that video, it was interesting to see it happen with only 4 games left. There was a 3-year extension attached to it, so it's not just a interim basis thing. This is going to be for the foreseeable future, and I do think this could be a really solid pickup here for the Islanders going forward, although I don't think it will help them for this upcoming playoff push. So very interesting note there, but DeBoer is now the new head coach in Long Island, so very interesting note there. And lastly, we're going over to a couple of trade rumors. So we only have 3 trade rumors here, not a ton of things to talk about as we are still in the midst of a playoff push, but there are a couple of things here I want to discuss. So first, I came across an article, once again, nothing really linked to by major insiders or anything. This is just an article speculating about some potential landing spots for Nick Robertson. Now, Robertson is a pending RFA in the Toronto Maple Leafs organization. His name has been in trade rumors for the past couple of seasons. He has been a decent middle 6 forward when he's been able to get into the lineup for the Toronto Maple Leafs, but he just hasn't reached the level that the Leafs thought they would get when they drafted him in the 2nd round a number of years back. And he's an RFA this year. He needs a new contract, and I'm not sure if the Leafs will want to keep him around. So I could see Robertson get dealt. I think he's probably one of the more likelier candidates to get dealt. This article linked 3 teams in the Kings, the Sharks, and the Stars potentially being landing spots, which all makes sense. He's from California, so going to Los Angeles or San Jose would not be too surprising, and his brother plays in Dallas. So playing with his brother might be something that Dallas would try and do, maybe to try and keep Jason Robertson in Dallas. So very interesting note there. Those are all very interesting options. The Stars could probably use another bomb 6 forward in the offseason, so I could definitely see them go after him. The Kings are probably going to try and rework their top 9, so like adding a younger, speedier type player like Nick Robertson wouldn't be too surprising. The Sharks do have a whole bunch of really solid forwards, so I think they'd be a little more hard pressed to find a spot for him in the lineup, but once again, if he made a couple of other moves, I wouldn't find it too shocking. So once again, I do think we will see a Nick Robertson deal in the offseason, whether it's to one of these 3 teams or somewhere else, because I do think that after all of the years of just being healthy scratches at certain points or not getting a whole bunch of playing time with Toronto, I think there's a really good chance they could try and move him, and I could see him maybe get like a 3rd round pick, maybe a 3rd round pick and a decent prospect back in return for Nick Robertson. So very interesting note there, but this article article does mention the Stars, Sharks, and Kings as potentially frontrunners to potentially land Nick Robertson. I could see a trade happen in the offseason, so we'll have to wait and see on that. Next, going over to the Florida Panthers. Elliot Friedman was recently mentioning this on, I think, a 32 Thoughts podcast or one of his radio hits, and he mentioned that if the Panthers do not win the first or second overall pick in the draft lottery spot, potentially even move down a pick or two, could they try and trade that pick to try and get some sort of an instant upgrade? Now, if they win the first or second overall pick, they're getting McKenna or Stenberg. Those two can help them instantly next year. So I would say the Panthers probably wouldn't trade him. But I think the Panthers currently have the 6th overall pick as the standings shape up right now, or the 7th overall pick. So if they wind up with a pick somewhere in between the 6th and 8th range, and then move a spot or two down in the draft lottery, will they consider moving that pick as a potential trade chip for them? That's a possibility. Like a top 10 pick for a lot of teams will be very, very interesting. We know the Florida Panthers are very, very aggressive. So would I be shocked? No, I would not be shocked at all if the Florida Panthers did wind up moving that first round pick if it wasn't in the top 3. So I could see it happen, but I'm not going to say it's a guarantee at this point in time. And on top of that, the Panthers would have to get one heck of a return. Like if you're moving the 6th or 7th overall pick for some sort of an instant upgrade, you got to have a really solid piece, whether that's like a top 4 defenseman or a top 6 forward. So very interesting note there. I don't think it's a guarantee or a lock by any means that the Florida Panthers do move their first round pick, even if they don't win the lottery. But I just think with how aggressive that team is, I would not put it past them that if they got the 6th or 7th or 8th or 9th overall pick after the draft lottery finishes, they move that pick and try and get some sort of player who can instantly upgrade that team. So we'll have to wait and see on that, but keep your eye on the Florida Panthers, especially if they lose the draft lottery, as potentially flipping that first round pick to another team to get some sort of player that could instantly help their team. So definitely keep an eye on that. And lastly, here going over to Ben Kuzma. He's a reporter in Vancouver, and he mentions that the Vancouver Canucks may look to try and trade Jake DeBrusk in the offseason. He says that DeBrusk might be willing for a fresh start, a change of scenery after what was a very, very bad season for him. He had a couple of really long goal droughts, and on top of that, just was not himself. So that has led a lot of people to believe DeBrusk could be dealt by the Vancouver Canucks. There was a lot of speculation towards the trade deadline that Jake DeBrusk could be dealt by the Vancouver Canucks. Now, it never came to fruition at the deadline, but it could wind up being something that happens in the offseason. He's got this year plus, I think, 5 or 6 more seasons at $5.5 million cap hit. For what he can bring as a potential 30 goal scorer, that cap hit is not half bad. It just doesn't seem like the fit in Vancouver is really working. So yeah, I definitely think there's a very likely possibility we could see the DeBrusk moved. I think the Canucks really have to decide, do they move Pettersson, DeBrusk, or Beathard, or are they solutions going forward through the free will for the Vancouver Canucks? And I do think after the bad season Jake DeBrusk had, I think he'd be the most likely of those 3 candidates I just mentioned to potentially get dealt by the Vancouver Canucks in the offseason. I think there would be a number of NHL teams who have some major interest in trying to add Jake DeBrusk, who can fit into most teams' top 6s as a really solid goal scorer. So very interesting note there. I personally would not be surprised if DeBrusk was moved by the Vancouver Canucks, but that's just my opinion. So I'll let you guys thoughts on all this down in the comment section below. Do you think the Canucks will move Jake DeBrusk in the offseason? Do the Panthers flip their first round pick if they don't win the lottery? And do you think that LA, San Jose, and Dallas could be landing spots for Nick Robertson? Love your guys' thoughts on all of that, plus all of the other stuff we talked about earlier in the video. That's all I'm going to talk about for today. Once again, if you can, leave a subscribe, leave a like, leave a comment. Really does help with the channel. It's free to do so. Let me know you guys like this content. So if you can, leave a subscribe, leave a like, leave a comment down below. Love to hear your guys' opinion on all those discussed here today. Don't forget to stay tuned for my live streams coming out later this month on top of next month, as we're going to be doing some playoff live streams. Also, if you haven't already, check out my Buy Me a Coffee page. If you really do want to support the channel and help with the channel, go over to that page and make a donation. I'll leave a link to it in the description below. I also do a blog talking about news, rumors, analysis, stuff like that, so check that out. I'll leave a link to that down in the description below. Can't wait to see you guys all for the next video. See you guys soon.